Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we continue following the latest developments in the tumultuous love story between single mother Hoai Ca and police officer Hung. A relationship that once seemed simple has become increasingly complex, as secrets from the past slowly unravel and fragile connections intertwine with dangerous underground forces. This episode marks a major turning point when a highly dangerous event suddenly befalls Hoai Ca, pushing her into a breathless struggle on the razor's edge between life and death. How will she survive? Will Officer Hung make it in time to save her? Or is it already too late? Every detail in this episode is a crucial link in the intense chain of events that is rapidly unfolding. Watch closely from beginning to end, because missing even a single second could mean missing the bigger picture as everything shifts. When Du heard that Tony, the child who once meant everything to Hoai Ca, had now been brought to live with her, and that both were staying in a small riverside house owned by Mr. Ha, the fisherman who had saved her from the raging waters on that fateful day, he couldn't sit still. Perhaps, deep down, the flame of love he held for Hoai Ca had never gone out. No matter how much time had passed, no matter that she had vanished from this world as if evaporated, the moment he heard her name, just knowing she was alive, he came rushing back, like an instinctive response from a man who had once devoted his entire heart to a woman. This time, Du didn't return merely as an old acquaintance. He carried a deep regret that had never left him, and a fierce determination to bring Hoai Ca back to live with him, to care for, protect, and make amends. He thought, if only she would agree, if only she would come with him, he would take care of everything else. No matter how hard it would be, no matter the burden, he was willing to start all over again. Because to him, Hoai Ca had never been a burden, she was someone he had always wanted to protect for the rest of his life. But Du didn't expect what came next. The calm eyes and gentle but firm rejection from Hoai Ca. She didn't recognize him. In her present world, one still shrouded in the blankness of forgotten memories, Du was merely a stranger. There was no trace of familiarity, no image flashing back as she stood before him. She didn't remember who he was, nor could she feel the affection he had once given her. And so, his well-meaning offer to take her home only made her feel uneasy and distant. She politely declined, not out of ingratitude, but because her heart, at this moment, had no space left for that kind of connection. Mr. Ha's mother, a seasoned woman who had lived long enough to understand things that the young often cannot express, gently spoke up. She said, with Hoai Ca's current condition, forcing her to revisit a memory she herself could not access would only complicate things further. It would be better to let her stay here, with Tony, in this quiet riverside house, peaceful and far removed from the noise of her old world. She and her son, the man who had once saved Hoai Ca, were more than willing to care for her, to stand by her as true family, expecting nothing in return. Faced with such sincere, heartfelt words, Du fell silent. But not wanting to give up completely, he softly offered to bring in a private doctor to help Hoai Ca recover her memory. Even if she refused to go back with him, at least she could receive the best medical support. Yet once again, Hoai Ca declined. Not because she didn't trust doctors, nor because she doubted Du's good intentions, but simply because she felt she was doing fine. She might not remember anything, but physically she was no longer fragile. She felt peaceful, cared for just enough, and to her, that was enough. As for her memories, she said if they truly belonged to her, they would return naturally, in their own time. And if they didn't, perhaps she no longer needed to live tied to a past she couldn't connect with anymore. Du stood still. He didn't cry, didn't raise his voice, didn't press any further. Only a deep sorrow quietly welled up in his eyes. He didn't blame her. How could he blame the woman he loved for forgetting him? He blamed time instead, for taking her away from his embrace so gently that not a single trace was left behind for her heart to follow back. And maybe, in that moment, he understood one thing: the only thing he could do now was step aside from her life, not interfere, not force, just silently watch over her, and wait, if one day, a miracle might happen. As for Hung, the man who was once the pride of his family, who lived in a spacious, well-furnished house, had a solid career and a bright future, he now found himself face to face with a raw and suffocating reality. Ever since it was discovered that his mother was involved in an underground financial network and deeply indebted to loan sharks, Hung's life began to spiral into an inescapable vortex. His reputation and career took a serious blow, and even his home, the place that had been his haven for so many years, had now become a burden. With no other option, Hung was forced to leave the grand house that once symbolized his pride. Suitcases were packed in a rush, and the few belongings he brought with him were now mere remnants of a life that was once stable and full, but had now shattered under the weight of unforeseen circumstances. In a pale sunset, Hung left, quietly, without a goodbye, without a sigh. In the days that followed, he frantically called and messaged friends from all corners, not to save his career, nor to reclaim his house, but simply in hopes of gathering enough to pay off the ruthless loan sharks who were hunting him down day and night. Those phone calls, once full of hope, gradually became cries for help, only to be met with long tones and silence. He had become familiar with rejection, accustomed to fighting alone with no one left to lean on. Fortunately, an old friend, someone who had once weathered the hardships of student life with him, finally replied. That friend had no money, but something even more valuable: an old, long-abandoned house on the outskirts of the city. Though it was dusty, broken down, and lacked even the most basic comforts, to Hung, it was the only roof over his head. No pitying glances, no questions asked. Just a shelter, even if it was a rusted tin roof, it was better than sleeping on the streets. Hung arrived there alone. He told no one. Especially not Hoai Ca or anyone close to him. Because he was afraid. Afraid that one day, the debt collectors would track him down, and if she was nearby, she would be pulled into the mess, into the danger. She had already suffered enough, lost too much. He couldn't be the one to drag her back into the darkness. So, quietly, he began to clean the abandoned house. He brushed away spiderwebs, covered broken tiles with cardboard. Every action was silent, but filled with resolve. He didn't need a luxurious life, he just needed to survive. There, Hung accepted a life of hardship and simplicity: no warm lights, no air conditioning, no hot meals. Just long nights, the hum of insects, and a man sitting silently by the window, thinking of all he had lost, and what little he still hoped to protect, even with nothing left in his hands. From the day Hoai Ca was taken in by Ha and his mother and brought to their small thatched roof house by a stream in a remote fishing village, a quiet new chapter began in a life she once thought had come to an end. With her memory lost, unaware of who she was or where she came from, strangely, she did not feel lost. On the contrary, in the rustic mountain wilderness, her heart seemed to find calm, as if the painful past had fallen into slumber, no longer screaming to be remembered. Each morning, she woke to the sound of roosters crowing, sunlight casting soft golden beams through the worn wooden window. Mother Ha gently taught her how to pick vegetables, dry rice, and cook simple but heartwarming meals. In the afternoons, she followed Ha to the riverbank to help her seed the fishing boats, mend nets, and wash clothes. At night, the three of them sat around the crackling fire, listening to Mother Ha tell stories of the old village, while Ha silently watched her. His eyes never said a word, but spoke volumes to a woman learning to feel again. And so, naturally, amidst those slow, peaceful days, a quiet affection began to bloom. Not loud. Not rushed. Just little gestures, a glance when she clumsily dropped a cup, a jacket silently placed behind her on a chilly evening. Hoai Ca didn't know what to call this feeling, because in her foggy memory, everything was unfamiliar, but her heart beat differently whenever Ha came near. That morning, the sky was a bright, endless blue. Cottony clouds drifted lazily over the mountains. Ha invited her to go into the forest to pick bamboo shoots, a way to gather food and let her breathe new air. The forest was in bamboo shoot season, a delicacy only locals knew how to harvest well. Hoai Ca nodded, a rare smile gracing her lips, then followed him through the mist-covered path. The primeval forest unfolded in majestic stillness, lush greenery, thick canopies intertwining overhead. The air was crisp and pure, as if filtered from the sky itself. They split up to cover more ground. Ha carefully warned her not to wander too far, and to return to the old banyan tree if she got tired. She smiled softly, waved, and turned toward the hillside blanketed in fallen leaves. As she walked, she became absorbed in the plump bamboo shoots sprouting from the earth. For the first time since waking up in this strange life, she felt useful, felt like she belonged. But in her eagerness, she didn't notice how far she had strayed from the trail. The wind picked up. The sky turned gray. When she finally stopped to call out to Ha, her foot slipped into emptiness. The damp, crumbling leaves couldn't hold her weight. She tumbled down the slope, her body slamming into a thick, old tree. A harsh, cracking sound rang out, then silence. Everything faded, the smell of earth, the scent of leaves, the light, all dissolved. Hoai Ca fell into a dense, inky darkness. On the other side of the forest, Ha had nearly filled his basket. He paused, looked up, and called her name. No answer. Called again, still silence. Thinking she had already returned, he hoisted the basket over his shoulder and walked home. In his mind, he imagined her standing at the stove, wiping her hands on an apron, smiling as he stepped in. Maybe, just maybe, today he'd finally find the courage to confess how he felt. But when he reached the gate, his mother was still sitting there, confusion in her eyes. She didn't come back with you? 1 second of stillness. The basket slipped from his hands. His limbs went cold. Twilight fell quickly. The small house was silent, filled with worry. Mother Ha lit the fire and cooked rice, but no one touched a bite. Ha paced restlessly, eyes fixed on the forest, heart burning with unease. When the sun disappeared behind the hill, he grabbed a coat, a flashlight, and silently headed back into the woods, alone. The deeper the night, the deeper the forest. Crickets chirped. The wind hissed through the trees, forming a haunting symphony. Ha pushed through the underbrush, calling her name without pause. His voice echoed far, then vanished into the void. He followed trampled grass, faint footprints, rustling leaves, desperately searching for a sign she had been there. But the forest was vast. The darkness, thick. And Hoai Ca still didn't answer. Near midnight, his shirt soaked in sweat, arms scratched from thorny vines, knees bleeding from falls, Ha still didn't turn back. He couldn't. Not when the girl he silently cherished was lost somewhere in the woods, her fate unknown. At that moment, the forest no longer scared him. What terrified him more was losing her. Losing the woman who, piece by piece, was restoring his hope, his faith, and the love he thought had long withered away. Deep in the dense primeval forest, where sunlight barely pierced through ancient treetops, a woman lay motionless. Her hair tangled with dry leaves, her arms scratched, her face streaked with dirt and blood. The only sounds were the gentle whisper of the wind, the distant call of wild birds, and a faint, fragile breath, but she was still alive. Hoai Ca slowly opened her eyes. Everything was blurry, spinning like a never-ending dream. She tried to sit up, clutching her pounding head. Something in her mind had just collided, then shattered, like a dam bursting after a violent storm. And then, like a waterfall of memories, the past came rushing back. She remembered everything. Her name was Hoai Ca. She once lived in the city. She once loved. Once lost. Once was betrayed. She had been a wife. A mother. A woman who had hurt so deeply that she chose to walk away from her old world to find herself again, only to be swept into a journey she herself had never fully understood. The broken fragments reconnected, like a film playing in reverse. She remembered Tony's cries. She remembered Hung's pained gaze. She remembered Du's quiet, gentle silence. She remembered her mother's tearful face when she left home. She even remembered the little house where she first arranged white flowers after giving birth. As the memories returned, she burst into tears. But before that joy could be complete, she was hit by a terrifying reality. She had no idea where she was. Her fall had sent her tumbling down a slope into a remote area with no signs of human presence. All around were towering trees, no trails, no markers, no way to know which direction led home. No phone. No signal. Only herself. Hoai Ca forced herself to stand. Her left leg throbbed in pain, but she pushed forward, trying to climb back up the hillside she thought she had come from. But no matter how far she walked, it all looked the same. She was trapped in a loop. The trees surrounded her like a maze with no exit. Exhausted, she finally stopped by a small stream. The water was cold, crystal clear. She knelt down, her hands trembling, and drank from her cupped palms. It was the first time she truly felt it, that life was precious. Every sip that passed down her throat awakened something primal within her, the will to live. She told herself she had to survive. For Tony. For her mother. For herself. No one was coming. So she had to save herself. She followed the stream, hoping it would lead to a trail, a sign of life. Nothing. She used the small knife tucked at her waist to dig up edible roots, the kind that, somewhere in the blurred memories of village life, Mother Ha had once shown her. She built a fire from dry twigs, roasted the roots on a stone hearth. They weren't tasty, but they were enough to survive. When night fell, she curled beneath a tree, clutching her old scarf. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow on her dirt-streaked face. But in her eyes now was clarity. The fog was gone. On that face, there was not just fear, but resolve. Tomorrow, she would keep walking. Even if she had to crawl. Even if she had to circle the whole mountain. She had to go back. She had to see Tony. She had to tell her mother she was sorry. And if fate allowed it, she had to face Hung, the man who once loved her, the man who once hurt her, and the man whom, perhaps, she had never truly let go. 2 days after Hoai Ca went missing in the forest, the news finally reached Hung. At that moment, he was on his way back from a night spent in the abandoned house of an old friend, a shelter during the most desperate days of his life. He had been silently watching over Hoai Ca from afar, never daring to get too close, fearing that his presence might bring her trouble, especially now, with lone sharks relentlessly hunting him down. But this time, it was different. When he heard that Hoai Ca had gone up the mountain with Ha to forage for bamboo shoots and had gone missing, still not found even after 2 days, Hung's heart clenched. His eyes darkened, the phone in his hand trembled. All the exhaustion, the debt, the burdens weighing down on his shoulders, everything vanished in an instant. Only one thought echoed in his mind: she's missing. She's in danger. He immediately turned his motorbike around and headed straight to the local police station. No hesitation. No complaints. With a pale, sleepless face and wrinkled clothes worn from wandering, Hung walked in, his voice urgent yet restrained, the tone of a man who had once been an officer. Her name is Hoai Ca. She went missing in the northern section of the primeval forest 2 days ago. She has no phone, no companion. She suffered memory loss. She's physically weak, highly vulnerable. Without delay, Hung began coordinating with local police and villagers to launch a search. He knocked on every door near the forest edge, printed photos, handed out flyers, and pleaded with groups of young men to join the rescue. At night, he carried a flashlight through the narrow forest paths, following faint footprints, calling her name until his voice was hoarse. At dawn, he returned and started again, as if fatigue didn't exist. Scorching sun, jungle rains, blood-sucking leeches, nothing stopped him. Every time he returned to the resting station, Hung stared at the forest map, eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness, heart full of despair, but never once did he let go. He still believed Hoai Ca hadn't recovered her memory. He feared she didn't know how to find her way back. He feared she was hurt. He feared she had collapsed, alone, terrified, with no one beside her. But above all, he feared that this time it might be forever. He blamed himself. Why did he leave her alone? Why didn't he come sooner? Why, when she might have needed him the most, was he helpless? And yet, the burden didn't stop there. The debt collectors didn't give up. They kept texting, calling, even showing up at the homes of people he knew. The financial pressure tightened around his neck like a noose. At times, he had to shut off his phone, shutting out the world, just to focus on the one thing that still mattered: finding Hoai Ca. Some told him, maybe it's time to give up, maybe she's already. But he refused. She's alive. I know she's alive. And I'll be the one to find her. Because deep in Hung's heart, he knew, if he gave up this time, he would lose everything. Not just the woman he once loved, but also the final chance to redeem himself for all the pain he had caused. In the deep forest nights, only the flickering beam of his flashlight remained, and the echo of his voice calling. Hoai Ca. Hoai Ca. No one answered. But Hung never stopped. After days of wandering aimlessly through the dense jungle, hands scratched, legs bloodied, stomach aching from hunger, Hoai Ca finally stumbled upon a deserted country road. The afternoon sunlight touched her gaunt face, tangled hair, and eyes filled with both joy and uncertainty. She had no idea how far she had traveled, only that each step came with a gasp for breath, each moment a battle for survival. Though her memory had begun to return, Hoai Ca couldn't clearly recall the exact address of Ha's house, the place she had called home since the day she was saved. All she could remember were hazy images: a small stream, a crackling fire at night, the gentle gaze of a quiet man, but names of villages, communes, or any directions? Completely blank. So she just kept walking. And walking. The evening wind brushed her face, dust clung to her feet, her body ached with exhaustion, yet she did not stop. She believed that as long as she kept moving, someone would help, that some light would eventually guide her back. And then, a small miracle happened. By the roadside, she saw a modest eatery with a tin roof, a few plastic tables and chairs, and the smell of rice and soup wafting into the air. Her stomach growled loudly. Embarrassed but overwhelmed by hunger, she stepped forward and softly asked, "Excuse me, can I wash dishes in exchange for a meal?" The shop owner, a kind-hearted middle-aged woman, looked her over. She was covered in dust, her shirt torn at the shoulder, her face dirty but her eyes sincere. The woman didn't ask much. She simply nodded. "Come in, wash up. Eat first, we'll talk later." Hoai Ca washed dishes with practiced hands, neatly and thoroughly. After the humble meal, the owner asked her story. She told it in fragments, saying she had gotten lost while picking bamboo shoots, couldn't recall the address of her home, but remembered a man named Ha, a fisherman who lived near the northern primeval forest. As luck would have it, the owner's husband had once fished in that area. He pulled out a map, asked a few questions, then stared at her in disbelief. "You walked from that forest to here? That's over 50 kilometers, you know?" Hoai Ca froze. Her eyes stung. She hadn't realized she'd come that far. Knowing she couldn't walk all the way back, she gathered the money the shop owner gave her for helping, barely enough for a bottle of water and a piece of bread. She knew she needed more to take a bus. But not wanting to beg, she planned to walk further, holding on to her faith that she'd somehow reach her destination. Just as she stepped outside, a middle-aged man stopped his motorbike and asked if she needed help. After hearing her story, he said nothing, just pressed some money into her hand. "Take it. Catch a bus. Don't walk anymore." Choking back tears, she bowed in gratitude, unable to find the words to say thanks. A few minutes later, a woman and her daughter, who had also just eaten at the eatery, approached her. The woman gently said, "Sister, we're heading to the bus station, let us take you there." And just like that, amidst the dust and weariness, in a journey that had seemed hopeless, Hoai Ca was once again lifted by the kindness of strangers. They didn't know her. They owed her nothing. But in the moment she was most broken, humanity gave her wings, to go home. And so, after 3 days of crossing forests and streams, of getting lost among the mountains and the uncertainties of the heart, Hoai Ca finally returned. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight bathed the worn roof of the small house where Ha and his mother lived, Mother Ha was splitting firewood, her eyes constantly glancing toward the gate, hoping, despite all hopelessness. For 3 days, she and Ha, along with many villagers, had scoured every trail. Each time they returned empty-handed, she would sit silently on the doorstep, whispering prayers, "Please, heavens, don't let anything happen to that girl." And then, footsteps echoed faintly at the end of the lane. The sound of sandals, wobbly, trembling, but steady. Mother Ha looked up. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Hoai Ca. Thinner. Pale. Eyes red from wind and dust. But alive. And clear-headed. Fully aware. She dropped the bundle of firewood and ran out. Without a word, she threw her arms around the girl, tears streaming down her face, tears of joy, of relief, of silent gratitude to the heavens for bringing her home. This girl, once lost in memory, adrift like a leaf on a river, could now say her own name again, remember her past, her child, and the love she once left behind. Hoai Ca gripped her tightly, choking back tears. "I remember now, Mom. I remember everything." The news of her return quickly reached Hung, thanks to a phone call from Mother Ha. He was sitting silently in a dark corner of a friend's house, face gaunt, clothes soiled from days trekking through the jungle. When he heard Mother Ha's broken voice on the other end of the line say, "She's back, Hung, and she remembers everything," it was as if he'd been jolted awake from a long, exhausting dream. He jumped up, bolted out the door, leaving behind his backpack, his debt, and every trace of pain and failure. He ran, like if he were even a second late, it would all vanish. When he arrived, she was sitting on the doorstep. Her face had regained color. And her eyes, those same eyes he had once loved and hurt, looked at him as if she had never left. No words were needed. They embraced. A hug with no explanations. No apologies. A hug between two hearts long fractured, separated by misunderstanding, by silence, by time. And yet, somehow, they found their way back. Because of love. Because of hope. And because the trials they'd endured had only deepened the truth of their feelings. In his arms, Hoai Ca whispered, "I remember you. I remember everything." Hung held her tighter. His tears finally fell, for the first time after days of restraint. "I thought I lost you again." That evening, the sky burned red with sunset. A man who had lost everything, and a woman who had lost herself, were finally reunited. Together with love. And memory. They came home. But even though her memory had returned, and she was now safe in the arms of those who loved her, for Hoai Ca, the real journey was just beginning. Because she still didn't know a cruel truth waiting ahead. The person who had nearly cost her life, the one who cast her into that dark void of forgotten memories and loneliness, was none other than the mother of the man she had just embraced after days of separation. If one day the truth is revealed, if she learns that the root of her suffering wasn't a stranger, but the very mother of the man she loves, will Hoai Ca choose to forgive, or confront? And what about Hung? A man who had once watched his career, reputation, and home crumble under the weight of his mother's secrets. Will he have the strength to face that harsh truth? His mother, once a symbol of pride and power, was now on the brink of arrest and public disgrace. What will he do? Between filial duty and true love, what will he choose? A woman who lost her memory, now forced to confront the pain of the past. A man who once wore the police uniform, now faced with a suffocating choice. Will a love just reborn be strong enough to survive the shadows that still linger? The answer remains unknown. And the next chapter will leave you breathless. Stay tuned for the next episode. Hoai Ca, Hung, and the truth behind the veil of memory. Will everything fall apart once more?
Xin chào tất cả mọi người. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoai Ca và cảnh sát Hùng nha mọi người. Hôm nay thì ở diễn biến câu chuyện nó có một số tình tiết khá là bất ngờ khi mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoai Ca bị ngã chân ở trên rừng, thì điều này khiến cho cô ấy bị hôn mê và bị lạc trong một thời gian dài. Nhưng mà cũng chính cái tai nạn này thì đã giúp cho Hoai Ca khôi phục lại được trí nhớ. Và hiện tại thì cô ấy đã hồi phục được trí nhớ và nhớ được ra bản thân mình, cũng như là nhớ ra được tình yêu với Hùng. Hùng thì cũng rất vui. Thứ nhất là đã tìm được Lý Hoai Ca sau khi cô ấy đi lạc về. Thứ hai là cô ấy đã nhớ ra anh. Nhưng mà Hùng thì lại đang phải đối mặt với những thử thách vô cùng khó khăn về kinh tế. Khi mẹ anh, người trực tiếp gây ra mọi sự đau khổ cho Hoai Ca, thì đã vay mượn và cầm cố xã hội đen rất là nhiều để lấy tiền để bịt miệng những cái tên mà bà sai khiến. Vậy thì liệu tình tiết tiếp theo sẽ diễn ra như thế nào? Mình mời mọi người đón xem vào tập tiếp theo ở ngày mai nha.